Okay, so like Sasha said, if you can turn on your videos, thank you so much. We will actually not just be doing a Q&A, but we'll be doing some exercises throughout, as well as a breakout session. So you guys have an opportunity to meet and chat and talk about some of the ideas that we're going to discuss today. So it will be hopefully interactive and interesting, fun, and engaging to meet with other people. So thank you, Sasha, for making this happen. I have been on this crazy journey to blend the worlds of personal finance and effective altruism. And these ideas may seem like polar opposite ideas. But in fact, I think there's a lot more in common than we think. I personally believe that everyone deserves access to financial literacy and financial education. And right now, I think overall the industry is gray, confusing, hard to navigate. And so I'm on this mission to make money thinking and education more transparent, easy to understand, and for the do-gooders of the world and the EA community, I hope that providing these resources can help us all do really just a little bit more good. And so my background is I'm not your traditional like financial advisor associated with a bank. I'm what is called like an early retiree, akin to the FIRE movement, if anyone has ever heard of that. And so it means I have enough money saved up and actively invested to live off my passive income, which means I no longer need to work a traditional job. And so this is very cool because it frees up time for me to explore ways that I can help others and volunteer my time in a way that is meaningful and impactful. And so this idea of financial independence, like if what I just said seems very appetizing to you, we'll talk more about that in session 2 of this Finance for Good series. So do sign up for that. Sasha, maybe you can throw the link for that event in the comments. But today we'll be taking a step back from any sort of super complex math or investing advice, and we'll more so explore the mindset of money and how that plays into the decisions that we make, largely how we spend and how that aligns with our values. And again, we'll be doing a couple of active exercises and some breakouts. And Sasha, I'm not looking at the chat just because I like to stay a little focused. So holler at me if a question comes up or someone wants me to stop. So you guys, this is interactive. Like if I've said something that's confused you, please stop me, raise your hand, or throw some info into the chat.
Okay, sure.
Cool. Okay. So I just want to kind of set the scene for this discussion. A lot of times in the EA community, when we think about decision making, we obviously are trying to rationalize what is better, what's more effective, what's more impactful. And oftentimes this can lead to sort of binary ways of thinking, like I must choose this career over this career, or I must donate to this charity over this charity because it's more effective or impactful. And I know for me, when I used to think about giving my money away or my time, energy, or other resources, I thought to myself, well, I'm either keeping this money for myself or I'm giving it away so that I can help others. And I think that this created a little bit of friction for me. And I'm sure you have all like had this, when you're trying to spread the word about effective altruism and giving, that people are like, well, I'm not there yet. Like I haven't made my own money. I have to take care of myself. I'm not quite there yet. I don't know if I can give away. And so it can tend to fall flat on deaf ears. So I firmly believe that when we can really take a look at our own finances, we are truly optimizing how we spend, how we invest. If we have a financial plan, it frees up all this time, energy, and resources to help others. So the pie chart isn't just split in half between us doing good for ourselves and us doing good for others. The pie chart overall expands, and we're just overall in a better place to help people and help others. And so today I want to start with some very basic money psychology fundamentals that will hopefully help everyone think a little bit more about financial optimization. And so some of you guys may be in a space where you have thought about this a lot. like spent a lot of time thinking about your money, a lot of time about your finances, and some of you may not have all. And so that's okay. This call is for everyone and anyone on their finance journey. If you're already there, saving, investing, building generational wealth. And if you haven't thought about this stuff at all, that's great. I'm so glad you're here. So in general, I think this framework is broadly applicable to most people. And these are kind of the stages that I think about, how do you get to being a money management rock star? So in stage one, you are completely poor. You're focused on self-preservation. You're unable to obtain basic tools to elevate yourselves. These are a lot of the people that we are helping and care most about, targeting our resources to within the EA community. In stage two, you can provide for yourself, but you're still maybe dependent for money, food stamps, assistance is needed. Perhaps you might be able to support yourself, but you have previous bad spending habits that have put you in debt. Some people may be in this stage, but hopefully most of us joining this call aren't in that stage two bucket. We're truly focusing on helping those in stage one and stage two, and maybe we're more starting out on stage three. So the money conversations that we'll be having today are really applicable to those who aren't in a deep sense of insecurity and fear. And more so, we have a stable balance and are able to think outside our own boxes. And so if you're in stage three, stage four, stage five, stage six, your income is sustainable, you can support yourself for stage three. At this stage, we can really start thinking about making longer term financial decisions that will improve our future life. But many don't and are living paycheck to paycheck. I would say most people are living in stage three. They're somewhere between secure and haven't been offered the learning tools that they need to elevate themselves to stage four, stage five. There's some sort of fear that's blocking them from moving forward, or they've just not had those opportunities to squeak into those next levels. And if you're in stage four, stage five, stage six, I would consider myself in that stage six category. Having started at, stage three or in stage four. So I've had that little leg up, compared to so many people across this world. Then you really are in a place where you should, and very much so, should be thinking about these things. Okay, so the bulk of today's discussion is going to be about intentional spending. So to be clear, I want to talk about spending. I don't want to talk about budgeting. In fact, Rebecca, am awful at budgeting. I really just think more about what I'm spending and what's meaningful. I typically struggle with budgeting methods out there. In fact, I find it painful. I find it challenging. I'm curious, like at a first glance from the budgeting methods on these screens by show of hands or in the chat, like, have you guys seen any of these methods before? Maybe like, yeah, I had not. Does anyone like deploy any of these methods actively in their everyday life? Yeah, so, yeah. They're like kind of like guidelines, right? Yeah, there's sort of like these basic methods out there, like the 50-30-20 budget, where 50% goes to necessities, 30% goes to wants, 20% goes to savings. It's pretty straightforward. It's a good guideline, but it's very easy to stick to lead to lifestyle inflation. So if you're making $50,000 a year and 50% is going to necessities, and then all of a sudden you're making $100,000 a year and you're doubling the amount going to your necessities, that doesn't really make sense, right? If you were living comfortably off those necessities before, are those necessities just changing because of your income? Maybe. So again, I like to focus a little bit less on traditional budgeting methods and more about intentional spending. So with intentional spending, I mean, I spend luxuriously on things that are important to me, and I ruthlessly cut costs on things that don't make me happier or don't make this world a better place. So obviously you have to live within your means, and you can't just say, I would love to live in a mansion on the coast of California, because if you can't afford to do that, you simply can't afford to do that. So using some traditional gauges like, let's try to not spend more than 30% of our income on rent. Although we know that can be maybe hard to do in places that are high cost of living, like New York City, right, Sasha? You're in New York. But if you want to focus on intentional spending, you don't have to budget to the same degree. And instead, you just focus on the things that bring you deep joy versus feeling like you're creating a budget and you're depriving yourself to figure out how to save more. And so it's not just about sacrificing, it's building a life with meaning. Now, all of this sounds nice and pretty, but obviously what you make from your salary, from your income matters. So an exercise like this is going to be much harder if you're already spending above your means. It's going to take you a lot of work to get your spending on track. And this could be hard because you won't see overnight results in terms of your savings. And maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck now, or you're in debt. And so making those changes could feel really hard. On the other hand, like spending below your means, it means you have room to breathe, but it may be harder to figure out how to spend on things that you love because perhaps you've been too frugal. Perhaps you haven't been spending on a way that's meaningful for you. And so the struggle for you might be trying to figure out how to actually lean into things more and spend more on the things you love, or donating, or whatever sort of financial plan that you have for yourself. So this is a really great framework that I wanted to bring in for our exercises today. It's inspired by this awesome, amazing blogger called The Budgetnitsa. And she always talks about your needs, loves, likes, and wants. And so this framework is meant to be personal. It is what is important to you. And your needs are necessities: shelter, food, water, healthcare. Needs can be tricky because it may be easy to think that it's something that you need. Like, I need a guest bedroom in my apartment for all the people that are going to visit me. You might not really need that. What you need is a safe home to live in and shelter to keep you warm. That guest bedroom might fall into one of the other categories. So needs can be kind of tough, but we're going to spend on needs, right? We have to live our lives in a safe and secure way. Loves are the things that bring us a deep sense of joy, long-term joy. We actually skip over loves and go right to likes and wants because they tend to be cheaper. So the loves are the big things. You might want to travel back home for a month out of the year to see your family, make time to learn a new skill and hobby, save up to buy a house, some of these things that might feel like far off to you. These things cost more money, take more time, more energy, and like a deeper commitment to get to them. Likes and wants provide us short-term joy or instant gratification, cheaper, easier to get. We tend to make worse habits out of them. This will look different, for everyone. For me, like a classic gratification example was I'd work, this was in the days before COVID, I'd go into the office, work, like I'd be in that stale office with that air con all day, freezing. I just need to escape. And so I'd go buy an afternoon coffee, right? So not a huge expense, not a big deal, but it wasn't the coffee that I needed to save me from the mundane. It was just like a break. So that's like an example of sort of instant gratification. So let's jump into our very, very first exercise. I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. I'll do it on my phone. And I just want you guys to go ahead, do it on your computer, do it on your phone, do it on a notebook, and brainstorm all of your loves. And this could be anything you want. There's nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed of. What would make you the most happy and most joyful person in the world? The things like, if I only had time for this, if I only lived here, if I only had that job, if I only had that money. Don't be scared, think big. And so I'll set the timer, go ahead and just write some loves. We're about halfway through. Okay. Another 20 seconds or so. Don't be scared to think big. Nothing to be nervous of or fearful of or afraid of. Okay. So I've thought about this a lot, but one of the things that I kind of came up with as I think about the life I want to live is I would really love to stop doing DIY renovations on my fixer-upper house that I live in. It's a lot of physical work. The list is never ending. And I would love to feel like I had more money to like hire contractors to help me with some of this work, which feels very far off for me. So, if you guys had any thoughts, throw them in the chat. Like if you feel comfortable sharing like a love that you feel like you're far away from, like I'm sure other people would love to see that. So go ahead and throw some loves in the chat. So for me, yeah, one of renovations. Sasha says, I love meeting my friends and family in person at least once a year, despite now they live across the ocean, right? That takes time, money, work in the space industry. Nice. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? I would love to support my aging parents. I love them. Traveling somewhere new for at least a full month per year. These are awesome, you guys. Spending time writing, exploring, learning new skills, pay down 60% of our mortgage. Yes, these are awesome. Okay. So hopefully that gets the juices flowing, like keeping our loves in the back of our mind for the next exercise, where instead now we're going to talk about our likes and wants. I'm just going to blend these two categories together right now. And so it's okay if you can't figure out exactly what's a like versus a want, but I want you to go ahead and list some of the likes and wants that you've spent on. This exercise might be hard to do because honestly, it's easy for us to forget this stuff when it's just embedded in our everyday lives. And these purchases could be more frequent and lower. So after the course, I'll encourage you all to do this exercise for real with real data. But for now, I want you to go ahead and take the next 2 to 3 minutes and just think about like in the past week or 2 weeks, some of the things that you've just spent money on that are likes and wants. And then I'll give you guys notice. At the end of that, I want you to go ahead and mark whether any of these are loves and needs. So for now, just go ahead, write down what you think you've spent money on likes and wants, and just have a little list of your expenses. Don't worry, you don't have to write amounts or anything. I'll set the timer and I'll let you know when there's 1 minute left to start marking them. Okay, so as we end this time, write down a few more things, and go ahead, start looking at your list. Like, do any of these are any of these building blocks like to your loves? Like, feel free to put a little heart next to it, right? So maybe it feels like a like or a want, but it's like a slight deviation from that. Put a little heart next to those things, and put a little X next to those things that are maybe really don't feel like they're connected to any of those deeper senses of loves that you felt out in the exercise before. Did any of you find that you didn't write down a lot for likes and wants? Like, you had a hard time thinking about them? Anyone here? It could be the case that you might be living too frugally, right? Like, that you might be scared of spending money. If you're one of those people, do you maybe also find that you have a hard time spending on loves too? So I can often be like this, where I come from a family with like a scarcity mindset. And so if this is you, maybe take some time to write 2 or 3 likes that you've thought about purchasing, but didn't. And then ask yourself why. So again, in reality, you can only do this exercise with cold hard data. So one of the things that I do is I really take a look at my expenses. I'm not obsessive, but I'm dialed in and connected to how much I spend throughout the year and what I'm spending that money on. So I strongly encourage you guys to carve out 1 hour or so this week to do this exercise again, but with your real data. And there's some resources below at the bottom of this. And Sasha, if you want to throw the link to the presentation in the chat now, there'll be, just so that everyone has resources, and there'll be some more resources later in this presentation too. Okay. So now that you had a moment to think about your loves, likes, and wants, and again, no answer is wrong. Really, do we think our core values align with our spending? Are we taking an approach to spend with intention? This is a lifelong journey. Are you spending on the things you love, but cutting ruthlessly on the things you don't care about? Are there any sort of core values that you might want to question? So this brings us to our last sort of self-evaluation exercise. I want you again to take the next 3 minutes, and I want you to make a list of all your money-related beliefs that you have learned from your family, friends, peers, and colleagues. So for example, I might put down, it's our moral obligation to give back. Right? That's given the influence and teachings from the EA community. I might also put, you can lose your wealth at any time, and you must save and keep money in the event of an emergency. This is what I learned from my family, which is largely Holocaust survivors. These 2 things are in direct conflict with each other a little bit, right? But seeing them on paper has helped me think through those fears and goals. So I want you guys to do the same thing. Take a few moments and write down the beliefs that you've had, and I guarantee some of the money behaviors that you learned at a very, very young age from your family, your peers, your colleagues, and your community. Okay, and then with the last few moments, I want you guys to just go ahead and put a check mark or a heart around some of these core values that you feel really resonate with you, you're proud of, you want to stick to. Put an X around ones that you might find painful. And also feel free to connect the dots between some that may seem like they correlate or they conflict. Okay, so now we'll get some time to meet each other. Sasha, I know this says like 10 minutes, maybe we do more like 7 to 8. We're gonna break it into groups, get a chance to just say hello and talk about some of the ideas here.
Yeah, give me a second to create breakout rooms.
No problem. So when you get into your rooms, just go ahead, introduce yourself, where you're from, and jump into it.
Yeah, I think once we have breakout rooms, people won't be able to see the slides.
The questions, I'll throw them in the chat.
If you can, if you can post them in the chat, then everyone would be able to access them.
Let me go ahead and stop sharing them. Okay, awesome. Hopefully everyone got to meet some people and get to know others. Connect in the EA Slack community if you're there, right, Sasha, or connect with the people that you met on LinkedIn. Make sure to keep the conversations going. Okay, so this is a list of resources. Sasha, if you wouldn't mind grabbing that link that we had in our Slack chat and putting it in the comments, these are a bunch of resources like tools, bloggers that I was just talking with someone about taking a $100 challenge. These are all things for you guys to explore. I wrote a little blog post too on my website about if you feel like you're spending hard on likes and wants. I wrote a little blog post on 68 ways to save. So there's lots of really good stuff out there. And yeah, Sasha has shared the link to that. Cool. Okay, so I want to flip the switch and talk about investing now with a little bit of time we have left. I'm not going to spend hours and hours of talking about how to invest in funds and accounts. That's not the goal here. But the whole point of doing this life savings psychology thing is to think about how we can build a meaningful life. And when we do have the ability to start saving more and creating extra money for us, it's really investing that helps us live that rich life and achieve those long-term loves we want. And the reason for this is the money that our money makes is more powerful than the money that we just sock away, that we earn and save. And so I know that investing looks very different across a lot of different countries, and that investment structures and vehicles are different. So this is all just kind of illustrative to show you the art of the possible. But who's heard of this $100 challenge, right? Like maybe over the next month, you're going to take a little challenge where you think about how I can save $100. So let's say you're getting yourself into a great financial situation where you are saving $100 a month. What are your options? So here in the US, we call it a checking account. You might put that into your checking account, which is the thing that you spend your everyday money with. You swipe your cards with at the stores to just spend your money. If you put your money into a checking account, $100 a month over the course of 40 years, that will be a total accumulation of $48,000. But if you were to invest that money at, say, a 7% or 8% return each year, the value of that $100, assuming you didn't touch it and assuming it was a steady growth rate of 8%, would be $322,000. And so this is why investing is such a powerful concept, and that, yes, saving money is great, but it's not working as well for us as if we were to put it into something that was active. And so this chart kind of illustrates this power of investing. It's called the power of compounding returns. So again, the money that our money makes is more powerful. So the blue bar at the bottom, for example, is the money that you're putting away and saving. And so let's pretend that's $5,000 a year. For some of you, that may be a shit ton of money, pardon my French, or it may be not that much money at all, right? But I'm just sort of giving you an example of $5,000 a year you are saving and putting away towards your future. If you were to invest that at a 7% return, this is what it might look like, okay? At the beginning, you're putting in the blue bar. So it's $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, so on and so forth. You start earning 7% each year on that money, but it's building upon itself. And so slowly that 7% is represented by the purple bar. And over time, at some point, that 7% on the $5,000 you put in each year, the switch gets flipped. And the interest that you're earning or that growth that you have is much greater than the money that you're actually putting in there. And so if you have never invested before, or you have barely saved before, and you're hanging out around here, it's hard to see how powerful saving and investing is because you're so far off from seeing your money work for you. But it's like a downhill snowball that's going to keep rolling and rolling. Once you get to a certain point, it's like your wealth just begins to create wealth for itself. And so it can be hard to see at the beginning, but once you understand the power, it really works for you. And just to illustrate this further, that time is on your side when you invest. If you were to invest $5,000 once at a 7% return, the general rule of thumb that we like to use in the finance community is your money doubles every 10 years, right? So it's that power of growth. So $5,000 becomes 10,000, 10,000 becomes 20, 20 becomes 40, 40 becomes 80, 80 becomes 160, 160 becomes 320, right? And so you get this concept that if you just invest and wait in the long term, that your money can have significant growth, even with really small amounts. So taking this investing and saving and just tying it together, I just like to think about like when I'm like, okay, you know, I'm not going to buy that. I don't know. I'm going to get a $30 dinner that's delicious instead of a $50 dinner that's really fancy and out of my league. If I'm going out with friends for a birthday or something, I'm not just thinking about the $20 that I've saved. I'm thinking about what that means if I were to invest it over the course of time. And so here's a little example that I like to use. So I've always I now live in Ogden, Utah, which is for US standards, like a pretty medium cost of living city. But I used to live in Boston. I'm from New York. I've always lived in high cost of living cities. And so I worked a pretty good job. I made good money. And I lived with roommates always, though, like even well into my 30s. And my average rent probably teetered somewhere around $1,000 a month for a room to myself. And the actual cost of that over 30 years, like let's just pretend I lived in those same rooms, my rent never changed, would be $360,000. But another way of thinking about it is what is the real cost or what is the opportunity cost? If I were to have invested that $1,000 over 30 years, that would be worth a whopping $1.2 million. So as you guys are, you know, shopping around for apartments and place to live, and you're like, oh, that extra closet might be nice, or, you know, it'll be so great to live alone. And obviously you should make choices. We shouldn't just be frugal and not spend the least amount possible, but making those choices with intention that when you say, okay, that rent I'm seeing is an extra $200 a month, that you can make those connections, that it's not just $200 a month. It's $200 a month over years and years and years, and that money is not invested. So again, I just have thought through like other life examples where I have taken steps to lower kind of recurring expenses in my life, because it's not the one-time stuff that gets you, it's those recurring expenses, your rent, your housing, your transportation. And again, like you don't want to live and deprive yourself, but just thinking intentionally, like, what am I spending my money on? And since we're kind of like close to the hour, you guys have the whole slide deck now. I'll leave this as a resource for you for later. We won't actually do this exercise, but there is this really cool opportunity cost calculator in here that lets you plug in both big expenses or recurring expenses, and it can let you see the impact of those expenses over time if you were to instead spend that money, save it, and invest it. And again, just from some of the conversations that I've seen in the chat or I had in my breakout room, some of you may be in a position where you are already living quite frugally. And it may be the case that this whole exercise isn't about spending less. It's about spending meaningfully on what you want and not spending on the things that are not important to you. So I will just leave you guys with a little bit of information about myself. You can find all my info, like all the stuff I've done on yieldedspread.org. If you're in the US and Canada is kind of similar, you can take our Learn to Invest course, which is pretty low cost, $75, and 100% of the profits go to the life you can save. I also have a ton of free resources on my website, including that 68 ways to save. And then I also do a free finance coaching for do-gooders. There is an application that's similar to the 80,000 hours. If any of you have ever done that program. So it's like a free 1-hour session with me where we can talk about some of your goals if it relates to, career change or donating. And that's on my website as well. And a bunch of people from the EA community have taken part in it. So I hope you guys found this helpful. And want to give the time back to people if they want, but also if you want to stick around and ask me any questions or bring any thoughts to the group, I would love to hear that. So thank you so much for being here and for contributing and being present.